Okay, continuing along in this module with the importance of employees, we talked about the obligations of employees previously, and now we're going to talk about some of the rights that employees are owed, and some of the rights that it's a wise thing to give them. So there are certain minimum legal entitlements that employees get, such as a minimum wage or equal opportunity, the ability to organize in unions, health care, vacations. All these are, some of them are negotiated into a contract, and others are certainly a part of law. And, um, and those are enshrined and protected for the individual employees. Moral rights, however, are not yet, and may never be, enshrined in law. They would include things like the freedom of speech, to be able to talk and to voice your opinion, the right to work, maybe job security, having just cause when you get fired, and having some kind of due process, although that now is mandated a bit in law. The freedom to quit if you desire to leave. All of these are obligations of moral behavior that are not yet significantly or at all enshrined in law. Now, the goal of all these rights is to create a corporate culture that nourishes people, makes their work valuable to the organization and to themselves, and therefore brings out the best in each particular person. Ultimately, if we recognize our employees as as pieces of equipment in the factory, and so they are disposable when they break down or don't perform at a proper level, then we are going to miss the entire opportunity of taking the talents that are inherent in each person and developing them and nurturing them and creating a much more profitable organization. We have to give them, for example, the ability within the corporate culture to say, you know what, I don't think that was fair. You made a decision, and and I don't agree with it. So there's got to be a process for that to allow people to make an appeal for an unfavorable decision. And you have the right, you should have the right to be able to demand a certain dignity and a certain quality of life, even within the corporate organization. So when we're talking about the rights of employees, it's basically to create an environment and a structure that nourishes and develops the people that are within the organization. Um, I'll give you an example. I had an employee once that kept making the same mistake over and over and over again. And it was exasperating at my end to have to go in and constantly correct the same error. And the excuse for the error was always the same as well. Oh, I got disturbed. Oh, somebody called me. Like it was anybody's fault but theirs. So now I understood we are at an impasse here in terms of resolving this. So if I can't fix it, then I can't have her working in the organization. So I figured that I would try something a little different. I went in, and instead of expecting the normal defense, I said, okay, I know you're going to tell me that somebody came in. tell me how you think we can fix this problem. And of course, they started talking to me and explaining to me exactly what they did in the process. And of course, as I'm listening to them and looking at them, I realize, because I had a son with disabilities, learning disabilities, I realize that I think that that's what's going on here with this person. The way they're organizing themselves, and then the way they physically are explaining themselves, I think they may have a learning disability. So I let her finish explaining, and I asked her, when you were a kid in school, did you have any learning disabilities? And, tears welled up, started crying, and she said, yes. I said, I know. And I said, now that I know that, we can fix this and we'll find a way to make it work for you. And it was really a very simple fix, because what her disability had taught her to do was to complete 20 tasks at a time. And of course that put her enormously far behind, and every time she got interrupted, it put her back to square one. So what we did is we took the 20 tasks and we broke them into little modules of 2 or 3 tasks that were easy to complete and could be done even if they were interrupted. It was easy to go back to the beginning if necessary and continue doing it. And it solved the problem for her. That is a corporate environment that nurtures other people. And that is an obligation on the part of the company to provide for the staff that they have. Not to simply expect that your edicts will be listened to, but to understand that the circumstances of each employee may require you to be a little bit more flexible and modify things so that you get the best out of this person. Because otherwise, when you let them go and you bring in the replacement, it's entirely possible that the replacement is going to have a whole set of other issues. And then you're going to have to fire them and keep retraining people until I guess you find some kind of a clone that's you. Whereas if you understand that there's a corporate culture that you're trying to create that is this nourishing and nurturing culture, then that problem is not going to be there. And that is owed to every employee. When we lose track as managers of the ethical obligations that we have to the employees, then that encourages the employees to make decisions with the same irreverence towards the values of the company. And there was a classic case in Toronto, I think probably about 5 years ago, about a window cleaning crew that went out to do the windows of an apartment building, 30 or 40 stories. And you know how they have those machines that go up and down. And the window cleaners, when they get to the site, there are safety regulations that are required. And it turned out that when the cleaners got to this site, they had forgotten to bring the belts that attach them to the side of the elevator, I guess, that goes up and down. The manager had to make a call, stop the job, go back to the warehouse and get the safety belts, or do the job, complete it on time, meet the deadline, and then drive by the warehouse and pick up the belts. Now, the culture in the company, according to the trial, was a culture that demanded that the contracts with their customers be met in a timely manner, because they didn't want to lose the business. And if the superintendent of the building was expecting you there at 9 o'clock, you better be there at 9 o'clock. If that job had to be finished by 12, you have to be out of there by 12, etc., etc. So that was the culture. The manager decided, therefore, that it was more important to finish the job than to protect the employees. So they went up on the scaffold, and of course, as things would be, it was a windy day, and the four guys that were on the scaffold, only one had a belt, because there was only one belt in the truck. The wind came, blew the scaffold to the side. Three of the guys fell to their death, and the one guy was left hanging on the belt, of course. Case came to court. The manager of the site was charged with homicide, as was the owner of the company, because of the cultural environment that he had created. At the end of the day, however, the owner of the company was found not guilty, but the manager was sentenced to prison 5 years. Now you have to understand, the people who died, people he knew. Maybe they were even friends. He certainly didn't wake up in the morning intending to be responsible for the death of 3 people. So he had to make a choice. He had to make a call. Now it looks, in hindsight, everybody would have, let's go back for the belts. But depending on the culture of the company, you may not always go back for the belts. You may not always stop the job because, in this case, it was a safety issue, and stop working because of the safety element. And that's why it's so important when we talk about the rights of employees for managers to realize that they are setting the tone according to the way in which they conduct themselves in terms of managing and the importance they attach to all the different protocols that they use. That is the view that your employees are going to take with them, including this manager who is responsible for these 4 other window cleaners. So that, as I said, I think is an important thing to understand, that even though we are owed certain rights, it is up to the management to develop a culture that nurtures not only those rights, but all of the things that are necessary in order to make the employees feel protected, respected, and able to do their work in a safe way.